Science tells us that the Earth revolves around the Sun and not the other way around. This has been indoctrinated to us. However, there is another belief that the Earth was actually at the center and that everything revolves around it. In fact, even the Church accepted this. So, what is right? Who is true? Regardless of this, what do you believe in and why do you believe it? So, this is Daniel Kolak's The Church of Science. But first, who is Daniel Kolak? Daniel Kolak is a contemporary philosopher born in 1955 in Zagreb, Croatia. He is a philosophy professor at the William Patterson University of New Jersey. He pioneered open individualism, where there exists but one numerically identical individual subject who is everyone at once. He published over 35 books and edited nearly 200 books. He argues that in the famous debate between Galileo and the Church, Galileo was wrong and the Church was right. One of the most basic and incontrovertible types of known fact that there is that the Earth goes around the Sun. This belief is relatively recent compared to the belief that the Earth is round, which was accepted for ages already. The Greeks believed that the Earth was at the center of the solar system. This is in line with Ptolemy's geocentric system, in which the Sun, Moon, planets, and the stars revolved around the Earth. This was even accepted by the Catholic Church, adding that the Earth was motionless and at the center. However, it was Nicholas Copernicus who first challenged the belief with a heliocentric one, placing the Sun at the center. He, of course, placed a disclaimer in the beginning of his work to avoid the consequences of going against the Church. Galileo Galilei, however, declared this to be the actual truth and not just speculation. The question that concerns us is with our indoctrinated belief regarding the solar system. Regardless of who was right, what do you believe in and why do you believe it? 19th century schoolhouses in the United States had ominous signs over the blackboard that read, "Fear God." Religious pictures of heavens, saints, and angels plastered were actually common. These were then replaced with pictures of great scientists and charts such as the hierarchy of elements and the solar system. The image of the solar system may be what introduced you to the Copernican-based heliocentric view of the solar system. Teachers would conveniently point out, which we now know as ostensive, the image to instill this belief. This simplifies the act of going outside and demonstrating how this is true, since in principle, one could do so, right? Surely, somebody must have actually seen that the Earth does move around the Sun.
So, in principle, we can simply go outside and look at the solar system to see how everything moves, right? We should be able to just look at the movement of the Sun, the Earth, the stars, and the planets. So, surely that's what the scientists did, right? For Copernicus' heliocentric system to be such a widely known scientific truth. They must have looked, right? So, for a second, let's think that we have all the technology and all the possibilities that we need to be able to actually see the movement of the Earth and the Sun. So let's do it. Let's look and see for ourselves. And yes, it's funny because why? Why are we even doubting this in the first place? Obviously, the Earth goes around the Sun. Like, that's so obvious. That's what we've known for years since we were children. Why are we doubting it now? So, in Daniel Kolak's The Church of Science, we are encouraged to doubt the obvious. Even though we are certain, we are so sure that the Earth moves around the Sun, let's see the truth for ourselves. So let's start with the very first experiment. So we go outside and then we look up. What do we see? The sun rises and then it sets, and then the moon rises and then it sets, and the stars are moving across the sky. So from what we see, everything is moving around the earth. So it's geocentric. So let's get into outer space. So let's get into a spaceship, and then we get into a spaceship, we take off. We fly up, directly up, straight up, until we are in a synchronous orbit around the Earth. So that means we are moving in the same speed as the Earth. Now we look down from our spaceship and we see that the Earth is still. We look up, the planets, the sun, are all moving around the Earth. Geocentric, again. So, of course, we're in the Earth's reference frame. We're moving along with the Earth. So, of course, we're gonna see that the Earth is still. So, let's start moving around the Earth and get out of synchronous orbit. So, we are now orbiting Earth in the spaceship. So, we look outside and we see the sun, the moon, the stars moving around a spinning Earth. It's still geocentric. So let's completely leave the Earth's reference frame. Let's go to the sun until we are in a synchronous orbit with the sun. So we look outside and what do we see? The planets and the stars are going around the sun. So finally, heliocentric. We finally have proof that the planets and the stars are moving around the sun. But wait, let's try going to Mars. We look outside and we see the planets, the sun, and the stars going around Mars. Huh? What's going on? So, what is actually happening? What is the actual truth? So, the truth is, no matter where you are in the solar system, from wherever and whichever reference point you are looking out from, if you're looking from the Earth, the Sun, Mars, a star, a planet, everything else will seem to be moving around you. So then, what are the true motions of the planets? The Sun? Is there even a true motion? So Kolak points out that even if there are true motions of the planets and the stars, we cannot see it just by looking. We cannot know the true motions and we cannot tell simply by looking. But that's exactly what the church officials said with their argument against Galileo, that you cannot tell just by looking. So who was right? The church was right with the fact that you cannot know the true system, heliocentric or geocentric, just by looking.
According to the church at that time, facts about the true nature of the world are not readily available to us without the revelation from God. It is not that we do not have the transport like airplanes and spaceships, or could go out and see for ourselves in a telescope, because we already have those at our disposal. It was not a matter of whether we have the equipment to look up and prove things, but rather there was no position in the universe from which to look. You may think that the problem was having a better vantage point, so we take off and never stop. What do we see? The Earth as a stationary dot and everything revolving around it. If we shifted our frame of reference, say in Alpha Centauri, our point of reference will remain locked and the same situation will happen. Albert Einstein showed that there is no absolute vantage point in the universe where we could stand to see what the true motions of anything are. The only absolute thing about motion is that it is relative. So why the Copernican model over the Ptolemaic one? The Copernican model is by far the more accurate as it easily explains the retrograde motion. The inner planets do not exhibit retrograde motion, whereas the outer planets do. Some of the planets would on occasion backtrack. The planet would slow down, then start moving backwards, and then forward again, thus the retrograde motion. But Ptolemy's system, explained in epicycles, does this too. Each planet does not just go around the Earth in a circle, but rather circles on its own orbit around the Earth. Ptolemy was able not just to account for the positions perfectly, but predict the future positions. The next reason was that the Copernican model is simpler. However, nothing could be further from the truth. It is not clear which system uses fewer epicycles. Great minds could not agree as to who had how many.
But let's get back to the matter at hand. We're not talking about complicated sciences and other scientific revolutions. We're just talking about the simple scientific fact that we've known for our whole lives. That the Earth moves around the sun. So after we've discussed the Copernican and Ptolemaic systems, and how there isn't really a true motion that we can perceive, we now realize that the heliocentric system is not completely accurate, and so is the geocentric system. But the thing is, even after we've discussed all the facts and all that we know now, our feelings of certainty that the Earth moves around the sun probably won't change, because it's been so indoctrinated into us. All these ideas and scientific facts have been so driven into our minds as the obvious and incontrovertible that we don't dare question or doubt them. Now, according to Paul Feyerabend, a philosopher and a known critic of science, scientific facts are taught at a very early age and in the very same manner in which religious facts were taught only a century ago. There is no attempt to awaken the critical abilities of the pupil so that he may see things in perspective. So they don't allow them to think anything else outside of what they are teaching. In universities, the indoctrination of these facts are done in a much more systematic manner. criticism isn't entirely absent, but science is accepted from criticism. Now, the mythologization is brought up to avoid the clash between Christianity and scientific ideas. Because if this clash occurs, then of course, science is right and Christianity is automatically wrong. Now, in this idea, you will see that science has become as oppressive as the ideologies that it once had to fight. Now, if you think you're convinced that God does not exist because that's what science says, then you might want to think again. Because if we investigate these scientific facts, these scientific revolutions, then it would be clear that every scientific view by anybody has turned out to be either false or deeply questionable. However, scientists will continue to claim that even though their theories may not be perfect, they were on the verge of actually understanding. But they never actually get closer to understanding because the theories shift completely. So today, we can see that the things we consider to be true are actually heavily biased, and that the truth that we all believe now, because of science, will someday be revealed as false by future scientific views. That will also be revealed to be false later in the future by more scientific views, and so on. So yes, science may be our best way to the truth. Maybe God isn't necessary to explain the world and that He only exists as a myth. But if everything we know now has been indoctrinated to us by science, by scientific authorities, then we are not convinced by these propositions. We are indoctrinated. And that's why we are members of the greatest religion to ever exist, the Church of Science. To conclude Daniel Kolak's The Church of Science, we have learned that science, just like religion, has been indoctrinated into us, and that's why we don't dare question or doubt what we know from the basis of science. Daniel Kolak challenges our views on what is true or what we know to be the truth, because the things we think we know might as well just be views that were indoctrinated into us by the biggest religion in humanity that almost every single one of us are a part of, the religion or the Church of Science.